It's chaos.
It's a different type of Sunday scary.
It's your newest obsession.
It's Dirty Driving, a Formula One podcast.
We're the Hornsby sisters. I'm Katie.
And I'm Megan.
Yeah. Hello, everyone.
Hello, hello.
Welcome back.
How much shit.
Welcome back to another episode of Dirty Driving. This week we are here to discuss, Megan?
We are discussing Monza. And please ignore how awful I sound. Jesus, you would think I was screaming at a television about a sporting event this weekend.
Well,
Me? Never.
you might have. You honestly might have. There was this little thing on Sunday called the Italian Grand Prix that I'm sure had you screaming at your TV.
Surprisingly not. I was very calm in that moment because I knew what was happening. I woke up, I went into the weekend just sitting there like, we know what's going to happen. The banana is going to be peeled and it's going to be a Red Bull victory.
You were at the Saints game.
Well, I was
Or
watching the Saints
You
game.
watched the Saints game.
Yeah,
That's
so
what it's from.
everyone can just listen to my atrocious voice. I did watch this week, and it was Thursday. I did watch the Buffalo Bills beat the LA Rams, and the whole time I was like, Danny Rick would be proud. I wonder if he's watching. Is he watching? He has to be watching. He probably wasn't watching.
Oh, he might have. They are his favorite.
He loves the Bills Mafia. Okay, we had a lot happen last week, but not a lot happened last week, Katie. I feel like it was a very busy turnaround between Zandvoort to Italy, but still the internet, the F1 community still had lots to say. And really, it all still centers around silly season, which we don't have answers to.
I'm blown away that we're still in silly season. My intern asks me every 3 days, is silly season still happening? Is it over yet? Like, what's happening? And I'm like,
We don't know.
we don't know.
We
This is the
don't
longest
know.
silly season I've ever been a part of.
I fully believe that Max Verstappen will be crowned the victor
Next
before we have
weekend.
before we have answers to the silly season.
Oh.
Like, it might not happen in Singapore, but he will be crowned the champion before we know who's driving at Alpine.
And I have a feeling that as soon as one comes out,
They'll all
they're
come
all
out
going to tumble downhill. Like,
because they're all contingent on one another.
yeah. So I need Alpine to make some decisions.
I used to think prior to this whole weekend, I used to think that they were like the linchpin. Once they decide, everything will fall together. But I don't necessarily know if that's true because rumor has it Gasly isn't the favored person for the Alpine seat. It's the F2 star, Doohan, now that is rumored to be like potentially going to take it. The other thoughts are Mick or Nico Hulkenberg. And look, I love Hulk Hulkenberg. Like, I love him. But I don't know if we need to go back to him racing. I think we have too many up-and-coming stars and too many people already on the grid that need to have a spot. Like, I don't know why they would give Nico a drive again.
I agree, and I'm just not sure that when he has been on the grid, he started the season this year for Sebastian Vettel. And I know it was only 2 races, but like, he just hasn't shown me the promise that other young, talented drivers have shown me in shorter amount of time.
Literally in like less than 2 days. We're going to talk about it.
We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about that a lot.
I'm so excited. I was telling, we were down in the French Quarter watching the Saints game, and I was like, but did you hear about Nick DeVries? And people were like, okay, lady, just shut up. Like, no, this is more important. I mean, not really, but still. Nonetheless, we have the whole like Alpine issue. Is it going to be Doohan? Is it going to be Mick? Is it going to be Nico? We also have the whole Colton Herta issue. So The issue with Colton Herta going to AlphaTauri is that he does not have the requisite points to be granted a super license. There's kind of two things we need to talk about here. First is there going to be an exception made for Colton so that he can get in on a provisional license, which is something that has happened before. Kimi Räikkönen, Max Verstappen. Max Verstappen is the reason why they made it more difficult to get fast-tracked into Formula One, because he made it so quickly. But so there's a whole conversation of, will he get fast-tracked? Will he get a bye? Will he get an exemption to the rules? And then there's also the conversation about, should IndyCar's points allocation be changed to match the Formula Feeder Series? So in terms of the Colton Herta conversation, it looks like he is not going to be getting that bye. The FIA have made it very clear, and in a statement, I'm going to read the statement because it's pretty telling. The FIA will not be pressured by any teams into decisions on matters such as super license points. Full stop. Period. End of statement. I think that's pretty telling, because it was, I don't know if it was Alpine. I don't know who was putting the pressure, but I think it was probably a combination of teams that were putting the pressure on the FIA to make the exemption. That is not going to happen. They're very clear. His claims are going to be denied. And that is a direct response to them wanting to hold on to like the integrity of slowing down the feed into F1. Second situation is, yes, I fully believe that IndyCar having an IndyCar championship should be worth just as many points as F2. And I think the only reason that it isn't is because it's American.
Yeah. Point blank.
I don't get why it wouldn't have the same amount of points. I feel like after I heard like Drogovic and Nick DeVries this weekend both talk about how difficult the transition from F2 to F1 is, that transition I think is essentially the same as IndyCar to F1. Based on what I haven't done it, but based on what I've heard, so why wouldn't it be worth the same amount of points?
Also, I recall this from our interview of our friend, that, you know, once you get to the level of driving required to drive in a series like IndyCar F1, switching over to a new car or a new system it's just racing. Like, you get used to it, you learn what you need to learn, you assess what you need to assess, you fix what you need to fix. It's just racing. And so being at a level in IndyCar and being at a level in F2 that you're winning championships, I think you should have every right to come over and try it out in F1. And guess what? If it doesn't work, then it doesn't work.
I mean, there's going to be a learning curve. They all talk about it. Nick DeVries literally was like, my shoulders. He
asked, we can talk about it now, but he asked if he was alone in Parc Fermé, and the team came and like scooped him out of the car and patted him on the butt and gave him big hugs, but he literally could not get himself out of the car. Which,
his shoulders hurt that bad.
Yeah, which was mind-blowing to me, because it's like, he's been a racer before, but it's not Formula One. At the end of the day, Formula One is Formula One.
Well, and it's a much longer race. And so if you're able to compete in IndyCar and win a championship, then to me, they're still like, IndyCar and F2 are like apples and oranges. They're not the same thing, right? But takes a certain level amount of skill to be successful in both. And so having them be awarded different allocations of points just seems stupid, because this whole situation wouldn't be a situation.
Right. He would either have it or he wouldn't. And
problem solved.
Instead of this silly, like, does he deserve it? Does he not deserve it?
These are the things that need to be readjusted.
Yeah. They could have made it a lot easier on themselves, the FIA. But
they could have made it a lot easier on us fans. Having to freaking Look, this weekend was just so full of things that I spent way too much time trying to mental math my way out of. We all know I'm not good at mental math, but I'm officially thinking that for the rest of the year and all these penalties, we're all going to need whiteboards. And then we're going to need more whiteboards to calculate championship points.
Yeah.
And how many laps we need in the safety car situation. Like, there's so many uses for a whiteboard.
I'll order you one, Megan.
Do not. The last little bit of news and something that I do want to share is that Mick Schumacher won the Driver on the Rise award, and he was awarded that at Monza, which I think is interesting that at the very circuit that there's a lot of questions, and really, I mean, there's been a lot of questions before, but in the weekend that there's all these questions about is he or is he not going to have a seat, they're like, and let's award you the Driver on the Rise award, but no F1 seat for you.
I have one other thing to add. Speaking of winning awards, Kevin Magnussen also won an award this weekend. He is the 29th winner of the historic Lorenzo Bandini Trophy. He received the news in Monaco and will receive the trophy in memory of Lorenzo Bandini later this year in December. But it was announced that he has won that as well. So
shout out K-Mag.
Shout out K-Mag. Yeah, first year back on the grid, winning awards.
Look at my Haas boys being productive.
Yeah. Being productive in their spare time when they're not Formula One racing.
When they're not being legends, which I'm so pissed that those shirts sold out. I want them. We look like a bunch of legends. They're going to come back in time. I mean, like they might be able to fund the team for 4 years if they just keep putting those shirts out in stock.
And I would love to make like a few editing suggestions. I'd love to, we should just contract out to the teams or be consultants of merch because
honestly, I'm willing to only do it for Haas and be Gunther's like personal merch maker. Like, I know Haas is short on change, but maybe with the money that you are earning from these "We Look Like a Bunch of Legend" shirts, hey, Gunther, like I said, I'd make a great next wife, and I could also be your merch maker. I feel like living with him would be just like an utter chaos.
You do not fuck smash my door. To fuck smash to close the door. Like
every day would be a dumpster fire.
Every day you'd have a new quote to put on a t-shirt, I'm sure.
Oh, absolutely.
You just have t-shirts for days with Gunther quotes.
In my mind, like the Wolf family is very like regimented. Like Susie's got a schedule, Toto's on a schedule, Jack's on a schedule, and then in my mind, like Gunther Steiner's house is like clean but anarchy. Like
it reminds me of, I just watched it, that's why. But the remake of Yours, Mine, and Ours with Dennis Quaid, and I can't think of the actress's name who plays the mom, but he's like the ship type. Everyone on a schedule. There's bathroom schedules. Everyone gets 7 minutes. And then the mom is like, there's pigs and the pig is painted. And yeah, it's great. So great kids movie.
Honestly, the Horner household feels more like that with the pigs and the asses.
Donkeys. Yeah.
And the horses. I'm still not over the scene where Jerry Horner tells Christian that his horse looks like Botas or is like a Botas. He's like, I'm not riding Botas. And I'm just like.
So, yeah.
Like, I think my soul left my body for a moment there.
It for sure did. I had to resurrect you.
I'm unwell.
All right, let's talk a little bit more about the circuit itself. It was constructed in just 110 days, and it was built way back in 1922. It's considered the oldest track in mainland Europe and the world's third purpose-built racetrack after Brooklands and the Indy Circuit. The original layout stretched over 10 kilometers with a 5.5-kilometer road section that looks similar to today's layout. You can still see some of the old banking, which is just a callback to the history. And it's nicknamed the Temple of Speed because the cars are on full throttle for 80% of the lap. And I was lucky enough to go to this track, not during a race weekend, but just on a random Wednesday and walk around and spend lots of money on the gift shop for Megan and I. But you can definitely feel the history, the legend, just the richness that comes out of this track. And I can't wait till we can actually go to a race there one weekend because it's beautiful.
I don't know, though. I don't know if we should go. Did you hear all the reports about how shitty it was?
Oh, like getting out and getting there? Or
well, you had to wait in line for like an hour for water or food, and you're only allowed to bring, like in Canada, I'm pretty sure we could have brought in like a Yeti cooler and no one would have cared.
Yeah. Canada was chill.
But in Monza, they had like a limit to how big of a water bottle you could bring in.
Yeah.
It just kind of makes me, well, I mean, the Italians aren't known for their organization skills. Scuderia Ferrari. They spent more time making merch for this weekend than figuring out what the hell they were going to do this weekend.
Yes, they did. They did.
We're going to get to the merch. I'm going to wait. Let's get through this before I get sidetracked into talking about the banana. The bumblebees, the buzzing boys, and their bumblebee outfits. Okay. Notable things about this track is Schumacher and Hamilton actually share the record for the most wins here at 5 wins. And of course, the most successful team is Ferrari, who have won 20 times here, but not since Leclerc in 2019 have they won, which really doesn't seem like that long ago, but also seems like an eternity ago. Usually this is the shortest F1 race all season, unless it's 2021 and Spa exists. But the 2003 race was actually the shortest race to reach full distance, with Schumacher winning in just over 74 minutes. I felt like this weekend was short too.
It was. It went
I blinked
quick.
my eyes and like half the race was over. This is also the track that saw the 2020 victory by Pierre Gasly, his maiden victory. We love that moment. And then the 2021 victory of Daniel Ricciardo in the first McLaren race win since 2012 Brazil. Memories. Hey, in the words of Daniel Ricciardo, if the race had ended after the first lap, he would have had a podium.
Amen.
Amen. Monza is one of the 4 circuits that are currently on the calendar that formed the inaugural 1950 season calendar. It has only been off the calendar once in 1980, and that was when Imola actually hosted the Italian Grand Prix. So that's one time. Pretty impressive for the track. 12 world championships have been settled here. The most recent one was 1979, and that's honestly just a function of the fact that seasons were shorter and this race was like later in the season. Realistically, there was a chance that it could have been settled this weekend if, Max had one less DNF earlier in the year, if you think about it. But ultimately, this weekend was all about Scuderia Ferrari, as this is the home. This is the land of the Tifosi. However, Katie, what did they choose to do this weekend? It was Ferrari's celebration of 75 years. It was actually a 100-year celebration of the track. That was completely overshadowed by the fact it was 75 years of Scuderia Ferrari. Well, 75 years of Ferrari. And they chose to celebrate it with a special livery and merch, of course. So, Katie, thoughts, comments, concerns. Let's start with the merch. Let's start with the race suits. Let's start with the pit crew suits, and then we'll talk about the car.
Happy to. So, if you missed it, which I'm not sure
how could you? If you missed it, you do not have eyeballs, because let me tell you, you could see that pit crew from the moon.
So they were in this bright yellow, which at first I hated, to be completely honest with you. I did not like it.
At first I was afraid. I was petrified.
It was just too much. Like, know your limits. And they crossed it. They crossed the line with the yellow. But then as the weekend continued and we got more Charles and Carlos content in the yellow, I
grew to love the color yellow.
I suddenly wasn't that upset about it. Like, don't get me wrong.
It's bad.
It's bad. But if you look at some of the close-ups, like chest-up photos where you've got the yellow and they've got the yellow sunglasses or the glasses that have the yellow accents, and Charles had this great blue watch that paired with the yellow. Like, you grew to love it. You really did.
Okay.
Megan's rolling her eyes at me.
Look,
I grew to love it.
I will concede that the race suits
We're not that bad.
were not that bad, except the fact that the undershirts were black. So they literally looked like a peeled, rotten banana. Yeah. Okay, that was an issue. What I didn't like is that they took the McDonald's shirts, the short sleeve merch shirts, and they made those yellow.
Yeah, that was unnecessary. Just come up with a completely different yellow shirt to sell.
Honestly, you could have gone all black on those, because when you looked in the crowd, it was random. It would be like red, 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 yellow, red, 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 red. And you're like, did they accidentally put mustard on their hot dog, but just like a little bit, not like a full amount? Like, it's just, what is happening here?
I will say there were so many good creative memes, side-by-side photos, tweets, like
whoever cropped the Charles Leclerc as a banana into the car.
Oh, I missed that. But that sounds
hard.
classic.
I laughed so hard, like I was wheezing. I was like, I was laughing so hard. And I was on a conference call. I can tell you for a fact I was on a conference call and I was like uncomfortably embarrassed by how much I was laughing at it. That was genius.
I mean, at the end of the day, it was something for all of us to talk about this weekend in another Max-filled weekend. So
I'll take it. I will say the car I loved. And look, bear with me. While I get that the yellow on the, like, above the engine where it said 75 and it said yellow after it, or had yellow after it, I get that that's going to go away. But I think they should keep the yellow numbers, because they're easier to read. And I think they should keep the rear wing that had the black Ferrari, it was black and then Ferrari was listed in either red or yellow. Not red, yellow or white. I loved the rear wing with the black, which made me think, like, why didn't you do like a black, like an all blacked out livery for the 75 anniversary? But no one asked me.
Thank God. I'll be the one to say it. Thank God they didn't make that car yellow. Megan is losing her mind. Oh, no, that's immediately what I thought, because I saw the track suits before I saw the livery. So I was like, oh, we're getting a full yellow car with red accents. No, we got a red car with yellow accents. So I just want to throw it out there that it could have been
way worse.
Way, 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 way worse.
In other news, Ferrari's greatest decision of the weekend was not to debut a yellow car.
Yeah, I'm always here thinking about how worse it could be so we can enjoy, how worse it was.
Honestly, I think they should have sold banana suits at the racetrack. Why not? Lean into it. Lean into the joke.
Lean into it, yeah. At least banana hats would have been cute.
Or honestly, the whole pit crew should have come out after the race in banana suits. Like something funny like that. Like, I get that it's very serious, Ferrari's 75 years, but come on. You literally put Charles Leclerc in a yellow race suit and you didn't think we were going to put two and two together. My other question is, do we think that the Ferrari PR people have seen the banana pictures? Or is that not something they've seen?
For sure. I know that all of their marketing, media, training partners, the ones that stand next to them during interviews, have gone through countless internet photos to dig up everything that's out there so that they know.
So that they're aware.
They're aware.
Oh, goodness. Well, it was a weekend. It was a weekend that was, of course, dominated by Max Verstappen, as we know. And really, Katie, we could have all predicted it.
We knew it was coming. We knew it was coming.
I could have written this. Before the weekend, and we all could have just fast forwarded, and I could have read this exact same concept right here. But let's begin at the beginning with Friday, where Friday morning, Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz were looking pretty good. Notable in FP1 is that Nick de Vries tried out his third team for FP1 practice sessions. Number 3. It's like he's going on first dates. Let me try this. Let me try that. Let me try this. Let me see what I'm interested in. This time he was in the car for Sebastian Vettel for Aston Martin. So this is his third one. Like I said, he did Mercedes in France, Williams in Spain, and now Aston Martin in Monza. Italian Jesus was out to play in the Alfa Romeo. I'm loving the short haircut. I'm loving it. However, I'm going to need some more cycling pictures, Gio, if you could work on that, please. Cycling. Giovinazzi walked so that Valtteri Bottas could run in terms of cycling.
I will agree with that statement.
Italian Jesus paved the way for the Valtteri Bottas cycling photos.
He did. He did pave the way.
I will stand by that statement. I'll put it on my grave.
He got in those short shorts. He posted it on Instagram, and he let Valtteri feel comfortable doing the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Last thing for that session is, again, we have the Sergio Perez DRS issue with, and I quote, it flapping about. That was about the point that I figured that the commentators were bored. Next up, we had FP2. This session, Carlos Sainz went fastest, but followed by Verstappen and then Charles Leclerc. Really, this session was dominated by two things. First off, Schumacher stopping on track and yellow flagging, which made me very concerned about how much run time he was actually going to get ahead of the race because he didn't participate in FP1 and then went out in FP2. So I was a little stressed about him, which would be rightly so, considering it wasn't a great weekend for him, especially under all of the pressure of trying to figure out and really trying to show that he has the ability to be consistent and to score points for his team to make sure he has a spot for next year. And the second incident that happened was that Yuki Tsunoda was noted for speeding in a yellow flag. Seriously, Yuki, stop acting like a rookie. Stop acting like a rookie. But nonetheless, he was given a 3-place grid penalty to match his 10-place grid penalty that he had going into the weekend due to hitting the 5 reprimand limit. So not a great session for either of those drivers. And then Saturday morning FP3, it is announced that Alex Albon is not going to be able to participate this weekend due to appendicitis. Who would replace him? Nick de Vries. So Nick went from the Aston Martin garage down to the Williams garage while also giving up his stint as a Mercedes reserve driver to be on the post-quali and post-race show. So very strange turn of events. He's one of very few drivers to actually be in 2 different teams' race cars in a weekend. But he participates in FP3 and he really only gets about 23 minutes of run time. So, and then they are like, okay, go out there and do qualies. Hey, you've been in the car 23 minutes. You'll be fine. You got this, bud. You got this.
We believe in you.
FP3 was ultimately dominated by Max Verstappen, and that was when I knew. By the way, all throughout this time, we're discussing massive amounts of penalties, which we're going to talk about in a minute. So we knew that Max was going to have a penalty, but really, did we honestly think that he wasn't going to cut through the field? If you thought that, have a second thought. Next up, we have qualies. Q1, both Haas's, both Aston Martin's out. This really was just a rough weekend for Mick Schumacher. I already said why, but it's just rough. Unfortunate for the Aston Martins as well. But guess who made it to Q2? Nick de Vries, who outqualified his teammate after having 23 minutes of run time after not participating in any of the other sessions, in fact, ran in a different race car for one of those sessions. Yes, I'm going to go through this again and again and again because this proves that Latifi sucks. We already knew it, but this is just the icing. This is the cream cheese icing on the carrot cake. I'm sorry, the cream cheese icing on the banana bread.
Oh, okay.
Sometimes I can throw that out there. But Nick DeVries made it into Q2, and he really probably would have made it into Q3, in my head at least, maybe not on paper, if he hadn't had that incident and it ruined a good lap, his last ability to get out. Honestly, not mad about it. Again, 23 minutes of runtime and then thrown into qualies. Then we get to Q3. Verstappen splits the Ferraris to take P2. Alonso doesn't set a time, so it ultimately start. He would be 10th in qualifying, but he wouldn't start there. And Charles Leclerc makes it on pole on merit. And the Tifosi go wild. Thank God he did that. But let's be honest, we all knew he was going to take pole and not win the race.
Thank God he at least gave us that, though.
He gave us joy on Saturday to be crushed on Sunday. And I feel like I can make so much fun of Max and be like, look, we're tired of it. We're bored of it. Because even his girlfriend is bored of it.
Yeah, I was rewatching the race a little late because I was traveling. And I was just, sitting, taking my notes in the airport. And they show Sergio Perez's father.
Clapping away that he got
dad,
an overtake in the P9.
And then in the background is Kelly. And she is stifling a yawn. And then she notices she's on camera and is like, she hesitates and then is like, go Max, go, under her breath. And I could tell she was a little embarrassed that she got caught yawning. But
we're tired of it too.
We're tired of it too. And then, you know what? To just put the cherry on top of it, the whole family, the Max and Kelly and the little kid, Penelope, spent the whole day on the yacht yesterday on Monday. And I'm just sitting in Chicago.
Corporate America.
Slugging away. And they're jet skiing and having a great fucking day. And so, yeah, that was the real cherry on top for me.
Hopefully she got a nap in. Do you think Max is in the middle of talking at dinner and she just yawns?
Damn.
I mean, how ridiculous is it? Oh yeah, my boyfriend's racing in F1. My life is so difficult. Yawns in the middle of his race. That's the only thing you had to do this weekend.
Oh man.
Helmut Marko's going to yell at her about that one, or push her over, trying to get past her.
Push her over, yeah. Push past her again.
This really does prove that Helmut Marko is a bigger fan of Max than Kelly.
That clip will never die in my head. I will always relive him pushing her out.
Yes, and then the whole. Okay, moving on. I can't.
Moving on. We can't talk about that.
I can't go back to it. Okay, let's talk about penalties. So, one of the big issues this weekend, and it was a massive talking point because this has happened twice now where we have qualies and none of us know what the starting grid is going to be and none of us can figure it out. When I kid you not, I need a whiteboard. That's not a diss. That's not me not being able to do math. At the point that I had to watch a video explaining the whole thing proves to me that there needs to be a better system for it. So let's run through kind of an understanding of what happened. And I'm going to use Max and Checo as my examples. So Max had a 5-place grid penalty. He would qualify second, start 7th. 5 places. Makes sense. Sergio had a 10-place grid penalty. He qualified 4th, but he started P13. Not 10 places, only 9. So what happened here? Basically what they did, and Katie and I posted the video, thank the Lord someone put that together because I would have never been able to articulate this without visually seeing it. So basically what they did is they took all the drivers in qualifying order and they pulled out the drivers with penalties and put them where they needed to be. So Max went from 2nd to 7th and Checo went from 4th to 14. So they pulled them out. Then what they did is they scrunched all of the drivers up to fill in between 2nd and 6th and then put Max in. Then they pulled all the drivers that didn't have penalties up and then filled in those with penalties after, which is why technically Checo should have started P14, but there wasn't a driver to start P13, so he got moved up. So his 10-place grid penalty was really only a 9-place grid penalty because of how many drivers took penalties this weekend. It's all about slotting drivers in and then at the end taking everyone with back of the grid penalties and putting them at the back of the grid. So Bottas, Magnussen, they both were able to, just like Perez, start earlier in the grid order than they really should have if they had taken a penalty on a weekend where less people had penalties. At the back of the grid, we had Schumacher, Sainz, Hamilton, and Tsunoda. All 4 of them slotted in that order at the back of the grid. We would know that Carlos Sainz would start P18 and Lewis would start P19, but they definitely wouldn't end anywhere near that. Nick de Vries definitely got a massive promotion, which helped his race. He went from P13 to P8. Lance Stroll went from P18 to P12. So it really worked out in some people's favor. But ultimately, Katie, we can full stop probably agree that there's something wrong with the system, that none of us know how to figure this out. But does F1 have the right, do they need to fix this? What happens now? Because this is gonna probably happen again, and it's annoying. So what can they do? Should they do anything?
That's a tricky one because off the top of my head, I can't necessarily think about what they could do to make this easier. How they did it is how I would have done it. Put the couple drivers where they need to be, slot everybody up, and then slot everybody in.
I'm saying should they change the penalty system so that we don't have not understanding it?
As in, we don't want to have people do the math to figure it out?
No, should they change the penalty system so that there's so previously what they did is if you couldn't make it to 6 races with the power unit, then you would get a penalty there. Should we be waiting, have an allocation? So once you hit or go above your allocation, everybody's taking penalties at the same point? Or is there or should they start looking at a way to do it so that penalties are A, either more spread out, or B, increase the allocation?
Got it. Okay. Thank you for that clarification. I'll be honest. To me, waiting an hour or two to get the grid lineup does not bother me as a fan.
Interesting.
Maybe it's because I know that eventually they're going to confirm what is playing out in my head. And again, we all know that I'm not very good at math and I get confused when numbers are involved, especially simple numbers. So I have number dyslexia. Thanks, everybody. So to me, I'm fine waiting. But I can see why that's a frustrating point for many. And I think if, we had a different recording schedule or, needed to know quicker for us, then I think I would be annoyed by it. I feel like they've already changed it. It changed this year. I don't know if there's necessarily a need to change it again because my fear of them changing it again is it's just going to get more complicated.
I think the only thing they should do is maybe standardize this. It just seems ridiculous.
It'd be nice.
Just seems ridiculous.
It'd be nice if there was a graphic going on throughout qualies that did the math
for you.
I think that would be my only fix is the analyst or the group of analysts that do this and figure this out. I don't know who it is on the FIA. If they were just telling it live and showing us live and, they could put a note on there subject to change, it is subject to change at any time. I think that would be helpful. because I will say watching qualies and trying to remember who has the penalties, where they are going to be, things like that. Like I'm picturing you've got the timing, and then next to it you've got serving a 5-place penalty, serving a 10-place penalty, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So most likely will be slotted in P6, P7. I think that would be super helpful as fans watching. And I would rather have that than anything else. So at least then during qualies, I would have a better idea of what was going on, and I didn't have to work so hard to have that understanding.
So, yeah, so ultimately it's like they need to get the provisional starting grid out sooner. We get it's provisional. It fucking says that at the top of the page. Like, I get what you're saying. Like, it wouldn't. Well, the other thing is, if anything, I think they could really, I don't know, maybe the number of places per situation needs to be maybe not standardized, but better to follow. There needs to maybe be like a better understanding of, you know, all the back of the grids and what order they fall in and why. I also think that, you know, like an extra 3 places for Sonoda for the yellow flag that decision should have come out sooner. But then again, he took components. Like I think you're at some point you're like, look, we're never going to, like, it'll take a while for us to know and all the penalties will come out, but there has to be some way of communicating it so it's not as confusing as it is.
Yeah. And I think, you know, F1 does a great job on the app where you can follow along with the live timing. That would be a great place to have a tab for like provisional grid and it's shifting as it goes. So there are definitely 100 ways that they could be communicating this better. But do I think that they necessarily need to change the penalty system? I think they just need to standardize the explanations behind why there is certain drops.
I will say, I think that there is something to be said about like using a component for X amount of times in a row before getting a penalty. I think there's something to be said about that, because if they're moving towards sustainability, like, yes, you could take 2 power units on 2 races back to back because of a crash or whatever, a power unit reliability issue, and you're sitting at 2 of your 3 allocation, but really you should be almost disadvantaged for going through components that quickly.
And by proxy, then people are awarded for not going through components quickly.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
I think there is room for improvement. I think there's no need to overhaul.
That's a good way to put it. There's ways for them to improve, but keep the structure as structured as you can from what you already have.
I mean, at the end of the day, with a 22 race season and new power units and reliability issues, we all saw this coming. It's just kind of ridiculous that they hadn't sorted out how they were going to do this efficiently and quickly ahead of time.
Or at least have come up with a graphic. I don't think that's asking for a lot.
I mean, they found that photo of Nicholas Latifi when he went fastest in FP3 pretty quick, so clearly they could whip this together.
If the TV producers can comment always struggling, McLaren on Daniel Ricciardo, I think they have enough time to whip together a provisional grid graphic.
I am unwell. After that statement, I am unwell.
Well, you're welcome. All right.
I have to contemplate that tonight.
This podcast is brought to you by Racing Thread, Formula One clothing for any occasion.
Their clothing features subtle, evocative, embroidered designs for your favorite F1 moments.
From Ricardo's Monza shoey to Sebastian's Australian scooter ride.
From Lewis's Brazilian comeback to Carlando's round of golf.
Whether you're out to dinner with friends, watching the race at home, or cheering in the grandstands,
gone are the embarrassing sponsor logos. Instead, Racing Thread is F1 clothing you are comfortable wearing anywhere.
Right now, Dirty Driving listeners can get 15% off Racing Thread's entire range of t-shirts, sweatshirts, and polos using the code Dirty Driving.
That's Dirty Driving, all capitals, no spaces, for 15% off their entire clothing range.
Head over to racingthread.com to shop F1 racewear for anywhere.
Let's get into the race because it was lights out and away we went for 53 laps. And it went quick. Megan, you were exactly right when you said that earlier. I blinked and we were already halfway through the race. And it was
Annoying.
It was a race. It was an interesting, annoying, heavily emotion-fueled race. But Charles got away well with a good reaction, but George Russell had the better reaction. They were side by side into turn one. George got pinched and goes over the rumble strips before rejoining the track behind Charles. Lando Norris had a poor start, falling to sixth place, and Zhao and Magnussen also went off, while Max Verstappen, who started seventh, was up to fifth, then fourth, before taking third off of Norris, Gasly, and Ricciardo. So he, as Megan said earlier, we knew he was going to make his way through the pack, and that's exactly what he did on lap one. Valtteri and Kevin had a touch of contact, and Valtteri was down bad in last place. We started to see a battle for second just laps later, with Max Verstappen overtaking George Russell down the main straight into turn one for second place. Meanwhile, Carlos Sainz, the red hot chili pepper, was moving through the field, making his way up to 10th by lap 6, passing Ocon, Vettel, and Stroll. And I loved the moment. We have a little group chat with one of our interns, and it's just like, we normally don't text that much during the race, but when something's happening good and we shoot off a text, I just love it because it was Sainz is moving through the field. Here we go, everybody. Let's get behind him. And
he was slicing. He was
slicing and dicing lap by lap. Every lap he was taking someone. It was really nice to see. It was really nice to see.
He could have been on the podium.
Here's one thing. I feel like, and I know we've kind of addressed this before, so we don't have to spend a lot of time on it, but I just feel like Ferrari does not support that man enough. Where's the excitement for him?
I mean, I think it's the same way that Red Bull doesn't support Checo.
I know. It's just like, breaks my heart a little. So
part of me also wonders if, unfortunately for Carlos, shit is always happening horribly somewhere else, that they're like, yay, dumpster fire here needs more attention.
Are we going plan A or plan C?
Or plan F, Q, G, Z? Like,
yeah.
Ferrari, you should just constantly plan on plan F. F for Ferrari.
F for Ferrari. F for failure. Anyway.
Plan F is the only plan for the Scuderia.
Okay, so Perez, who was down in 13th place, pits early. He pulls off from the pit, and his right front wheel is smoking. And all of a sudden, we've got flames emerging. And at this point, we really assumed he was come back into the pits to get that issue resolved. But no, he continued. Everything was fine. Car was on fire. Then it wasn't.
Flames are.
Yeah,
flames are either super casual or like awful in F1.
Awful.
There's just,
and there was a point made about the wheel caps and how they contain heat and don't allow the heat to escape from the tires, which was probably the reason that caused this overheating and flames to emerge. So, Megan, do we see those being removed next year just by this one thing, or was it just a one-off weird thing?
I think there was probably something stuck in the brake duct, or there was some issue with the brake duct. I don't think it was the wheel toupees. I thought that was a far leap. I was like,
yeah,
but they don't. they don't cover anything. They sit above for aerodynamics. Like, it's not like they're containing heat. Like, obviously they are because they're like stopping it from rising. But I think that was a stretch. I think the bigger issue is like the brake ducts, that there had to have been some issue there instead of the wheel toupees.
Yeah.
That literally like hover.
All right. So at this point, Sainz made his way around Zhao, De Vries, Alonso, Lando, picking off one after another. Each lap, it was beautiful. He made his way up to sixth, and his teammate, Charles, was just a second and a half to the leader. Sorry, excuse me. Let me say that again. At this point, Sainz has made his way around Zhao, De Vries, Alonso, and Lando, picking off one each lap and making his way all the way up to sixth. In lap 11, we saw smoke coming out of Vettel's car, where he then pulled off and DNF'd, leading to a virtual safety car. This man needs to catch a break, and I don't know if he will. Sainz was able to get around Gasly right before the VSC dropped, gaining another place, and Leclerc pit coming out in third behind Verstappen and Russell, just in front of Daniel Ricciardo. We thought for a split second, I thought he was going to be stuck behind Daniel Ricciardo, but he made it out just in time.
For once, the Scuderia do not screw up a pit stop.
For once.
They, in fact, knew and learned in the week since the Dutch Grand Prix that Formula One cars need 4 tires, not 3.
Just a quick lesson that they've learned over the past week.
Casual.
A refresher. Casual. K-Mag received a 5-second penalty for leaving the track and having an advantage, which is a rule switch that we have seen from last year. And Nick received a black and white flag warning for track limits. So am I surprised by that? No, it's his first race out there. He, a little overwhelmed, a little anxious, a little all of the above. Was not surprised by that.
Hadn't been in the car that much.
Hadn't been in the car that much. All the things. In lap 24, George Pitt coming out in fourth, and it stood as Verstappen, Leclerc, and Sainz before Max Pitt coming back out in second. Lewis made his way around Alonso down the main straight and up to P6. In lap 32, Alonso is told there's an issue with the car. He pulls it back to the pits and retires the vehicle. Leclerc pits again and comes out ahead of George Russell, taking back second place with 20 whole seconds to Max. So we knew at that point it was signed, sealed, and delivered. It was going to be a Max Verstappen victory. There was simply no way. Well, there was ways, but it was signed, sealed, delivered. Lando Norris returned to track after a slow, struggling pit stop between Ricciardo and Gasly, as Gasly overtook Lando, and then Hamilton came out of nowhere, coming from behind, overtaking both of them for seventh. It was a nice move, total Lewis Hamilton move. I read an article, I saw it somewhere about how Lewis is always thinking about the next corner, not the corner he's in. And that was just a prime example of the skill that man has.
That was the beginning of the end of Megan's voice.
Schumacher and Latifi had a battling moment through 3 corners where Schumacher took Latifi and Latifi came back before Schumacher rightfully took the place. With just 5 laps to go, the Monza curse struck again, with Daniel Ricciardo losing the engine, absolutely just crapping out in Sector 2, bringing out a yellow flag, and then a safety car.
And so then there was hope.
And then there was some hope. So George Russell pits along with Carlos Sainz, Max Verstappen, and Charles. So everyone's diving in, everyone's changing tires, everyone's gearing up for these last couple of laps, expecting the safety car to end and us to go racing again. The order remained as Verstappen, Leclerc, Russell, with 9 cars that needed to unlap themselves. So the safety car took its sweet time, and the marshals were standing and waiting for assistance. It took a minute, and honestly, I think we could have been a little bit more efficient, and we probably could have seen an end of the race not under the safety car, but oh well.
I think they should have just red flagged it. Once they couldn't get the car out of gear into neutral to remove it and had to wait for the giant crane, they should have just red flagged it. Like, that is my issue. Like, stop. If you don't want to end in a yellow flag, red flag it and have a 1-lap sprint.
And not only that, I had this nugget in the back of my head. I saw it. But they were reversing the crane on track as the cars were obviously going the other way. And that's a big no-no. We have seen one specific accident that I'm thinking about happen where, we've lost the life of a driver because of the crane. And so it's just like, stop. Let's take a look at what's really happening. Let's make sure that we're doing this safely, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah, you're exactly right. Red flag it, fix everything you need to fix, and let's start the race again.
Who cares if it's just 2 laps after the red flag? Like,
Yeah.
it's better than what we had happen. And also, it's like safer and less annoying.
Yeah.
Really, the annoyance factor is the key part here for me.
So on lap 52, we found out that we would officially finish the race behind the safety car, that there was not going to be enough time. Obviously, we've got 1 lap left. And so behind the safety car, Max Verstappen wins the Italian Grand Prix, standing on the podium for the first time in Monza and also taking his 5th win in a row. Charles took a consecutive podium finish since the first 3 races this season, so it's nice to see him back-to-back on the podium yet again. And George Russell came home in 3rd. Carlos and Lewis from the back of the grid took 4th and 5th. Perez is in 6th with Norris in yet another 7th place. He was ahead of Gasly in 8th, and the 67th driver to score points in his debut, Nick de Vries, takes home points and 9th place, pushing Latifi out of the standings, for lack of a better way to say it, and securing another couple points for Williams. And Zhao wrapped up the end of the points in 10th. So all around, am I happy that Max won another race? No. I'm ready to see a one-off win. I'm ready to see Lewis Hamilton on the podium. Hell, I want George Russell up there too. So whatever, but other than that, am I satisfied? I guess so. Pierre's in the points. Nick de Vries had a great show. It was okay.
I don't know. It happened. It was a thing. I think really the whole safety car, the way it ended, which look, let's talk about it.
Yeah, so, let's talk about it.
This is the first time a Grand Prix finished under the safety car since Bahrain in 2020. And when I kid you not, I knew these two were going to make statements and I knew they were going to be spicy. Lewis Hamilton said it always brings memories back. That is the rule that it should be, right? Like, so only one time in the history of the sport, they haven't done that rule. So look, I don't care. Like, at the end of the day, I think something needs to be changed. Maybe it's something like I read an article where they mentioned, NASCAR has a solution called the green-white checker, which basically is an overtime where the race distance is extended to make sure there's a proper finish. Look, I don't necessarily think they can do that because we don't refuel. But I think the fact that another sport has a mechanism for ensuring overtime means that we can have a mechanism to red flag and have two laps, like no extra distance, but maybe make the red flag. If a safety car that requires X happens in the last 5 laps, it's an automatic red flag so that we have a 2-lap sprint or something like that. There needs to be some mechanism. But the rule is the rule is the rule is the rule. So they follow the rules now, but they couldn't fucking do it in Abu Dhabi. I think this proves that Abu Dhabi was a fuck up and that Lewis Hamilton is the rightful champion last year. It also proves that while the FIA needed to make a change, they needed to change it and they needed to change it right after the race, but they didn't. So they had to hold firm in it. Total Wolf agreed. He said the race direction is going to be under criticism, but in this time, but they followed the rules. Like, it doesn't matter if you disagree with the rule, you have to do the rule.
Yeah, you still have to
And they
follow.
did the rule this time. They should have done it in Abu Dhabi. I'm sorry. Like, you can say that I'm salty. I am salty because it's fucked up. So you did the rule incorrectly so Max could win then, but you followed the rules here so Max could win here. All I'm going to say. I think he's rightfully deserving to be a champion last year. He's rightfully deserving to be a champion this year, but he didn't earn it last year. They should have ended the race under a red flag, or they should have red flagged the race and had a 2-lap sprint. It's 2 options.
There's so many ways we could go back and change that to have been fair. And sadly we can't.
Because Mercedes read the rule the correct way, and Michael Massey chose to read it. He knew what the rule was. He was just being a douche. It is what it is.
One last thing. We've got to talk about it. Can we say that the Monza curse is real? We had Charles Leclerc win. Next year, he DNF. We had Pierre Gasly win. Next year, he DNF. Then we had Daniel Ricciardo win. This year, he DNF'd. Megan, how you feel about it?
I think after three years and 3 times being proven true, I think it ultimately means that the curse is real.
I do too. I
just don't know how to break this curse. So
yeah.
Guess what? Max Verstappen, prepare yourself for a DNF in Monza next year. Not even Verstappen can avoid that curse. Okay. Let's do a quick little fantasy recap. Katie remains in 17th, and I am still in 4th. Scooter was our Max Verstappen. Ham is King was our Charles Leclerc. Gavo was our George Russell. But the most important thing that happened this weekend is that Gavo 11, is in the top 1,200 fantasy Formula players, which is pretty impressive. Shout out to him. And really, I think this has just solidified that tattoos are happening before the end of the season.
Oh, I've already started booking and researching and booking places in Austin. So get ready, Megan.
I really am thinking that we need it to be on Monday.
I know. It's on Monday.
Unless it's cool. Or we're going to be sweaty and itchy with our new tattoos.
I got us on Monday. Don't worry.
In the sun, in turn 12.
No, we'll do Monday. We'll do Monday morning when they open, and then we'll be on our way.
Then we'll vroom home.
Yes. My only bet I placed this week, I played it safe, was Charles on podium, and I don't even know if that's playing it safe because
no, that was even rolling the dice.
Risky. I was rolling the dice, but I won clearly, so that gives me some quick change to spend on our next race in Singapore. So get ready.
I think we'll play some good bets in Singapore. We haven't been there in a minute, so the track should be fun to see what happens. Okay, let's get into our winners and losers. I'm thinking that this is pretty much a duh from me, if anyone could probably guess my excitement. My winner is Nick de Vries. I mean, he converted an 8th place grid start into a 9th place finish, which gave Williams 2 key points. So, I mean, shout out for that kind of debut. He practiced for Aston Martin on Friday and then was in Williams on Saturday and Sunday. I think that's pretty fucking impressive to make that conversion in a weekend, all while having the pressure of trying to outperform Latifi, whose seat you want, which, by the way, when asked about his future grid spot, he said, ultimately, it's not up to me to decide whether or not I have a seat. Of course, I can only do my job. So pretty mum's the word there, and the lack of really any definite statement there makes me think that we should be getting some information soon. But I mean, it's a pretty impressive job interview. I mean, Nick literally said, I grabbed my opportunity with both hands, and yes, you fucking did. He outperformed Latifi, who is still the only driver to not score points.
He's not going to.
He's not going to. But I think my my prediction holds true because 2 Williams drivers have scored points.
I think I will count your prediction.
Latifi's like, I'm not going down that route. I'm happy Nick DeVries scored points on his debut. I thought that was awesome. I did think that it was funny because Nick DeVries commentates in the post quali and the post quali and the post race show that they did make a comment that if Daniel Ricciardo becomes a reserve driver, then he would be commentating in the post shows. And I was like, oh, girl, look, I'm not happy with how that would
come to be,
but I'm not against.
All right, my winner, because he deserves it, and I'm giving him the love this week, is Carlos Sainz. He started 18th. He made his way through the grid, like I said in the race recap, just picking off driver after driver, and he finished 4th just outside of the podium. I think had it not been for the safety car, and an article actually just dropped, I didn't have time to read it before, but it was on his commentary in the post-race. I think without the safety car, we definitely could have seen him on podium had he had a couple more laps to show.
And my loser is going to be Fernando Alonso. I feel like this is another duh, Megan. You picked the most obvious choices for yourself, but I'm just going to say it. He had some solid battles between him and Norris, between him and Hamilton. But he just didn't have the pace that we've previously seen out of the Alpine. And then ultimately on lap 32, he retired due to a power unit issue. Like, he's going to need a back of the grid penalty soon, I have a feeling, with his power unit issues. He ultimately ended his 10 race point scoring streak on his 349th start, which tied him with Kimi Räikkönen for the most Grand Prix starts. He's going to be racing well into the 400s, I have a feeling.
I don't think he's going anywhere.
As long as he has a seat, he'll keep racing.
And my loser is Danny Rick. Might be obvious, but he made it up through Q3, started P4 with all the penalties. I thought this might be the time to shine. I forgot about the Monza curse, so he would have finished in the points. Would have been a great bump for him if it hadn't been for that engine failure that then, caused the yellow flag, and that's how we ended the race. So this man needed a win, and he didn't get one, so he's my loser.
Hi, caramba.
I actually chose someone, Megan, who did not compete in Sunday's race for our honorable mention. I'm going out on a limb here, and hopefully you're all right with it, but I chose Felipe Drugovich, who commanded the attention to take the 2022 FIA Formula 2 Championship title with 3 races to spare. And actually, he suffered an opening lap retirement for the sprint race that forced him to sit and wait from the sidelines and wait for his fate to see if he was going to win or not. So he is who I chose as our honorable mention. Very quickly after the weekend, I think it was just announced Monday, Aston Martin announced that he would become one of Aston Martin's reserve drivers after the team also announced he will be the first member of their driver development program.
In a terribly weird photo with him and Lawrence. Lawrence, you're looking a little rough. Are you okay?
It was weird.
Are you okay, Lawrence? You look like you're losing a little weight. We like your big ass.
And Drugovich is actually also expected to substitute in for Lance Stroll at FP1 at the season ending in Abu Dhabi. And he will also take part in the young driver test at Yas Marina the week after. So we should see some exciting debuts, Formula One debuts, at least in practice sessions, and the test week after. So he's my honorable mention for the week.
I will say that he did a great job commentating as well. I watched the post-race show, and I thought he did a great job. And him and Danny Rick's little riff about his Post Malone glasses was pretty cute.
I have also a teeny tiny also honorable mention. It just goes to Kimi Räikkönen because he was there with his family and he gets honored for that. So
up next, we are foregoing our hidden gem for the week because it's pretty hard to say we have a hidden gem when we had such sadness in the world, the British community, the UK family, the Commonwealth, and the Formula One family. But last week, Her Majesty the Queen passed away at 96 years old. It was heartbreaking, but in a strange and surprising bit, it was quite comforting to see the love and the respect and the outpouring of support from the F1 community for the British drivers, the British teams, the British British citizens who are part of the teams. It was wonderful to see the outpouring of love, respect, and, extending of warm wishes, condolences, sincerity to them. 7 of the 10 teams are headquartered in the UK, and so it's not surprising, but yet it is quite incredible to see the amount of tributes to such an amazing lady who led the country longer than any other monarch in history. Important thing to note, she herself was a lover of motorsport. She was a lover of cars. She was a mechanic in World War II. There are numerous stories of her actually in the countryside. She saw an automobile, a tractor broken down of her actually going out and fixing it herself. So she was a formidable lady, and the world is a little bit darker for her loss. So awful, heartbreaking, very sad, but I am very, very proud of the F1 community for how they honored her and honored and supported those that are feeling heartbreak this week. Next up is not race week, which is the worst, but it's also slightly needed. We could all take a break, but that doesn't mean that our F1 content is going to stop. Join us as we deep dive AlphaTauri, Yuki Tsunoda, and Pierre Gasly. Thank you so much for listening to another episode. Don't forget to subscribe and follow us at Dirty Driving Pod on Twitter and Instagram.
Until next time, stay dirty.